Alright, today I'm giving a long-term update on the Ibanez PIA3761. It's been a long time since I've talked about this guitar. I've changed the strings, reset up the guitar, and recorded a whole song with it. I'll give an update on how this guitar has been. Of course, I'll demonstrate the sound, and the full mixed song demo will be at the end. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by Ibanez or any of the brands shown in this video. So let's jump right in to talk about the playability and feel, and I've finally played this guitar with an angled jack cable. And I'm bringing this up because this guitar has the angled output jack that I've talked about in the past. I've mentioned how when using a straight cable, it's not really comfortable or convenient to play sitting down in the kind of classical style like this. But with the angled cable here, you just plug it in and you have it angled down. So you can actually play seated in the classical style. And it does work. It is comfortable. I'm always going to personally prefer just the regular output jack down here in the corner, and then you have your straight cable coming out of there. But this works for sitting down playing like that. Of course, you can also play seated down in the standard style like this, no difference there. When you're playing standing up, it does have the cable at kind of an odd angle, and it is pretty easy to just pull out like that. So in the case of playing standing up, you would just want a regular straight cable, in my opinion. And from there, you just put it in through the strap, and it's locked in like that. If you're using the same cable for all things, then you will have the angled side plugged into your amp, your DI box, whatever you have. That might be inconvenient. Depends on how the setup is shaped. So it's almost as if you would need a second cable just for playing standing up, no angles anywhere. Maybe with your setup, it's not so bad if one side is angled. Maybe this is getting into the weeds of things, but for a guitar at this price, you will need to consider all options, make sure it really works for you. Moving on to talking about the neck. The neck feels better than ever. It's not quite as thin as a Prestige, as a Genesis, as a J Custom, but it is very comfortable and it is still very thin. Of course, the more you play a guitar neck, you will get the thumb oils in, you'll play it in, you'll wear it in. This naturally holds true for this guitar neck, no surprises there. When I first got this guitar, it was a real game changer because it was still plenty thin, but it's thick enough that it wasn't fatiguing my hands as much. And over the years, I've practiced, tried to refine my technique. Not saying I'm a virtuoso or anything by any means, but I am able to play the thinner neck guitars for longer now. That being said, this guitar is a nice go-to when I know I'm going to be having longer playing sessions. Switching between this and, say, a thin neck Genesis is an interesting phenomenon. I feel I can play pretty well on both of these, but switching directly between them, you can really feel that the neck on the Pia is a bit thicker, and then the Genesis does have that thinner neck. They've got different feels that can really make me appreciate them. I will talk about which one I prefer if I had to pick one or the other later. I think comparing to a Prestige, like this RG550 Cosmic Shadow, these feel like they have a slightly thicker neck than the Genesis, than the J Custom, but not quite as thick as this, just to put things into perspective. So I'll also mention if I'd pick the Prestige or the Pia later on, if I had to choose just one. But the point for this section for playability is that even though this neck feels slightly thicker than those other necks, you can still play pretty well, pretty fast. You don't feel slowed down at all. And of course, the scalloping on the high frets is fantastic. If I had access to the custom shop, if I was speccing out a guitar, I would absolutely pick this. I'd even want a few more frets scalloped too. It's very cool. You really feel like you can get in there with the bends. Of course, when you're conditioning your fretboard, you really have to get in there. Make sure you get the wood. But yeah, they're just as easy to play as other frets. Maybe a little more so because you don't have the wood dragging you down. I haven't had any issues with accidentally pushing notes sharp. I don't have the lightest touch. But unless you're really digging into the wood and white knuckling whenever you fret a note, it's not a problem at all. And then moving on to the body, I've said before that the body feels like a hybrid between a Stratocaster and an RG, just because this has the rounded edges like a Strat would have. But of course it's based off the gem, which is related to the RG. But as I've played this guitar more and more, it feels less like a Stratocaster. And I'm not saying that this felt like a Stratocaster to begin with, right? This is a 24 fret Super Strat, a shred type guitar. You can do other things besides shred on it too, of course. But no, this does not feel like a Stratocaster, except for the kind of curved edges in the body. And as I play it more and more, it feels even less like a Stratocaster. Now let's talk about the quality and stability. I did mention that I reset up this guitar, and this is the first time in multiple years since owning it that I've done a setup. So only the initial setup on getting this guitar until today. It's held up pretty well. And the setup I did is a little bit because of changing seasons and through the years and the like, but it's also because over the years I have gotten much better at setting up guitars, simply through learning and practice. So now I have better intonation, slightly lower action. The guitar has been very stable. It's gone through summers and winters. I haven't traveled with it too much. I don't think I would travel with a guitar this expensive. So I can't comment on switching between a hot, humid environment into something like snow in a far-off land. But through the seasons, going from place to place, it's been fine, very stable. I'm also glad to say nothing is broken, no issues with the wiring, the switch works just fine. The push-pull for that volume filter, it works perfectly fine too. The jack hasn't come loose. No cracks in the neck or the neck pocket. Although going back to the filter or push-pull on the volume, I pretty much never use it, so I can't comment for high usage. It is a cool feature and it does work. You do notice a difference if you engage it. Overall, I don't doubt that this guitar wouldn't be able to hold up to the conditions and perils of the road. I think it would. Let's move on to talking about the sound. Now the pickups sound great, especially with fresh strings. You can get good tones out of this. Even if you don't play like Steve Vai, which I can't play like Steve Vai. Who can though? I find for metal, they sound really good when you're riffing. You can also get great leads and cleans out of them. You name it, this guitar can pretty much do it. I found too that over the years, as I've been improving my guitar tone, my plugin presets, I've been learning more and more about guitar tone. Maybe someday I'll be able to make a good one. But I find with every improvement to those, this guitar sounds better and better. And with some guitars, maybe with completely different sounding pickups, maybe with different wiring, different circuitry, different resistances and potentiometers. They can sound certain ways and you might need specialized amp settings or plugin settings to get those to sound good. But in general, whenever I make a sweeping improvement or even a small improvement to one of my patches, it benefits this guitar. So in general, I haven't had to take any special considerations for this guitar when I'm making my plugin presets. If I need to switch to this guitar, I won't have to take 5-10 minutes tweaking all my settings. I can just continue the recording session. And I think that's especially valuable if you have limited time. Maybe you're a professional musician and you've got a whole bunch of songs to do, a whole bunch of parts to record. Maybe you're not a professional musician and you have other obligations. You have your day job, maybe you have pets, family, kids, you have to do errands, other things in life that come up, and you only have a limited amount of time to play guitar. It's great to know you won't have to spend too much time tweaking settings, but this is from my personal experience. Comment down below if you have guitars like that you can always just trust to sound good. So here's how this guitar sounds now in isolation. I've got a clean tone, a rhythm tone, and then just an example lead tone with some delay. Alright, so overall, has this guitar been worth it? If you're a longtime Ibanez fan, it is great to see the evolution of Steve Vai's guitars through the years. So is this worth it in terms of the price? Is this better than a Prestige? Because this costs way more than a Prestige. Well, yes, I'd say it is. But I'd also say there are diminishing returns for price of a guitar versus how good a guitar is. You do get better playability quality than a Prestige, but it isn't as much of a difference between a Prestige and this than a standard line Ibanez and a Prestige. That also doesn't take away from how good a Prestige is. Doesn't make it any less good. You can still have fun and make great music with a standard line Ibanez guitar, with a premium, with a Prestige. It will depend on how you set up and maintain the guitar. For example, if your guitar has super high action and you like low action, you're going to have a bad time. Maintaining the action you want season by season, week by week, you'll need a stable, high quality guitar. With this guitar, I've only ever had to set it up one more time just now, after some years. With the Prestiges, it's usually an annual thing. And with the standard line Ibanez guitars, I've noticed every month or few months I have to get back in there. Of course, there are exceptions. There are some standard line Ibanez guitars out there that are just rock solid. They had unusually good woods, materials. Whoever was building it that day was really motivated. And there are some lemon Prestiges. You get a Prestige and maybe the wiring breaks, maybe the neck pocket is off, maybe the wood, the body isn't as resonant. Those are all possible. But as a general rule of thumb, these seem to be super stable. Prestiges seem to be super stable, etc. Now, would I pick this or the Genesis? Well, given the big price difference, and you're still getting made in Japan quality with the Genesis, if you don't mind the color, you don't mind the difference here in the neck joint, the all-axis neck joint versus the tilt joint, then it's pretty much a no-brainer. The value for the Genesis is undeniable. Do they have different pickups? Yes. Do they sound a little different because of that? Yes. The pickups in the Genesis do get the job done. If you're looking to get an Ibanez and replace the pickups too, maybe you're a huge fan of bare knuckle pickups. It feels like it would be more appropriate to do that in a Genesis versus in a PIA. That is also my opinion. If you have a PIA or a Gem and you've changed the pickups, fair enough. It is your guitar. Would I pick this or a Prestige? You are still saving a bunch of money with going with the Prestige. You will have some budget for other things, guitar strings, plugins, pedals. But if you're a huge Steve Vai fan, maybe we're starting to get into the range where you could consider this. All right, now the PIA or the J Custom, this is where it gets interesting. They both have the angled output jack, but beyond that, the specs are diverging somewhat. You've got the stainless steel frets on the PIA. You've got the nickel silver frets on the J Custom. The neck is also a bit thinner on the J Custom too. And of course, different pickups. Now it's starting to become, which do you prefer more? Do you want the stainless steel frets? Are you a huge Steve Vai fan? Even if you are, would you rather have the J Custom with the slightly thinner neck? Maybe you like the color of this over this. Now, another thing I want to talk about, is that a guitar like this evokes strong emotions in people. Partially because it is very fancy, even if you don't know anything about guitars. The look is very distinct, just look at the inlay. But for people who do know guitars or do know who Steve Vai is, they will see this guitar and they'll feel a certain way. Some people will see the guitar and they'll love it. Some people will see the guitar in your hands and they'll hate it. Some people will expect you to be a flawless virtuoso. Some people will be okay with you doing your own thing with your own guitar. But the guitar is identifiable as an incredible instrument just by sight alone. There will be people who will see it and they will judge you harshly. Of course, there are people who will always judge you harshly based off of whatever music you make. So you have to ask yourself, are you extremely secure? Are you comfortable in doing your own thing with a guitar that is pretty identifiable? Are you okay with being compared to Steve Vai holding his signature guitar? These are questions you have to ask yourself if you're considering this guitar. Now, do I regret buying this guitar? All that being said. And the answer is no. I am a pretty big Ibanez fan. I am a fan of Steve Vai. And I am pretty comfortable doing my own thing. This guitar has been a joy to play. It sounds amazing. I have a good time every time I pick it up. But what do you think? Is Steve Vai's newest iteration of his signature guitar worth it? Or maybe is it overrated? Do you prefer the Gem? Let me know down in the comments below. Of course, this is YouTube, so I have to say the YouTube things. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video, print out every frame and mail it. Join the Discord to continue the discussion, check out the socials, and if you're looking for something cool to listen to, I have a bunch of original music and video game covers on Spotify and all major streaming services. Next is the full mix demo song, but as always, peace.